What happens when someone just disappears? Vanishes without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and a void that can never truly be filled. One minute, they're a student walking back to her dorm, perhaps thinking about the next day's classes or a future filled with possibilities. The next, they're gone, erased from the world as if they never existed, leaving behind only echoes of their presence. This is the story of Kristin Smart, a story of a life interrupted, a mystery that has haunted a community for decades. It began on a foggy night in May 1996, a night that started like any other, but would soon become etched in the collective memory of San Luis Obispo, and, in many ways, it still hasn't ended. The search for answers continues. The hope for closure remains, even after all these years. Kristin's face became a fixture on telephone poles, a constant reminder of the young woman who vanished without a trace. And newspapers, a bright, hopeful smile frozen in time, a symbol of the innocence lost and the questions that linger. She was 19, full of life and dreams, on the cusp of adulthood. A freshman at Cal Poly, eager to embrace the challenges and opportunities that college life offered. A campus nestled in the hills of San Luis Obispo, a picturesque setting that belied the darkness that would soon envelop it. For Kristin, it became the last place she was ever seen alive, the last known point in a life that was tragically cut short. The headlines screamed her name, demanding answers, pleading for her safe return. But as days turned to weeks, the search slowed, and questions mounted, casting a long shadow over the investigation. It was Memorial Day weekend, a time for celebration, for honoring those who served, for enjoying the start of summer. But for the Smart family, it became an anniversary of absence, a painful reminder of the daughter, sister, and friend who was no longer there. The narrative of that night would be picked apart for decades, scrutinized and analyzed in an attempt to piece together the truth. Every detail scrutinized, every lead investigated, every possibility explored in the relentless pursuit of justice. She was walking back to her dorm with another student, Paul Flores, an acquaintance from the party. He said he left her to walk the rest of the way alone, a decision that would forever be questioned and debated. And then nothing. Silence. Emptiness. A void that swallowed Kristin whole. Kristin vanished into the coastal fog, a fitting metaphor for the mystery that shrouded her disappearance. It's a story that feels like a ghost story, except this was real. A chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. A young woman with a future, dreams of a career, a family, and a life filled with happiness. A family and a life full of promise was gone, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and enduring grief. The mystery wasn't just what happened to Kristin, the who, what, when, and where of her disappearance, but how it could have happened in a place so familiar, so seemingly secure, a place where students should feel safe and protected. The initial reports were confusing, filled with inconsistencies and conflicting accounts, filled with hazy details from a late-night party, making it difficult to piece together a clear picture of what transpired. The short distance from that intersection to her dorm became a black hole, a void where Kristin disappeared without a trace. She vanished, leaving behind only silence, a silence that spoke volumes about the unanswered questions and the lingering pain. And a question that would echo for 25 years. A question that continues to haunt the Smart family and the San Luis Obispo community. This is where our story begins, the story of Kristin Smart, a story of loss, mystery, and the enduring search for truth. Who was Kristin Smart before the headlines? She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, full of life, with dreams of becoming a broadcast journalist or architect. Her family remembers her kindness, her adventurous spirit, and her infectious laugh. Kristin was just starting her college journey, making new friends and carving out her identity. The tragedy isn't just in her disappearance, but in all the chapters never written. Her family fought to keep her memory alive, sharing stories of her humor and compassion. It was the memory of the real Kristin, the girl with the brightest smile, that fueled the relentless search for answers. The night Kristin Smart disappeared, a chill settled over the Cal Poly campus, a premonition of the long, agonizing search that was about to begin. The carefree atmosphere of late spring would soon be replaced by a cloud of uncertainty and fear. It was Friday, May 24th, 1996. The end of the academic year was in sight, and summer break beckoned, Campus was buzzing with end-of-semester energy, students celebrating the near completion of their studies and the promise of summer adventures. Kristin, like many of her fellow students, went to an off-campus party, a final celebration before the semester officially closed. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the easy camaraderie of college life. Witnesses said she seemed intoxicated. She was seen enjoying the festivities, perhaps a little too much, as the night wore on. Around 2 a.m., she was found passed out on a neighbor's lawn, a short distance from the party. The quiet of the night was broken only by the sounds of crickets and the distant echoes of music. 2 students, Cheryl Anderson and Tim Davis, ever the Good Samaritans, helped her up, concerned for her well-being. They started walking her back to her dorm, intending to ensure she made it back safely. The dimly lit campus walkways offered a sense of security, or so they thought. Paul Flores joined them, seemingly out of nowhere, offering to help get Kristin to her room. His presence seemed innocuous at the time, a fellow student simply lending a hand. Cheryl and Tim eventually left, trusting that Kristin was in good hands, leaving Kristin in Paul's care, a decision that would be scrutinized for years to come. It was the last time anyone but Flores ever saw her alive, a chilling realization that would fuel countless investigations and endless speculation. According to Flores, in his various statements to the police, he walked her to the intersection near their dorms, a familiar crossroads for many students, then watched her walk away, disappearing into the night. A simple explanation that failed to satisfy investigators and those who knew Kristin. Kristin never made it back to her room. Her bed remained untouched, her belongings undisturbed. She never used her keycard to swipe into the building, never called her parents to let them know she was safe. She just vanished, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. The next morning, her roommate noticed she hadn't returned. A growing sense of unease began to creep in. Her wallet and keys were still in her room, a clear indication that she hadn't planned to be gone. At first, people thought she'd gone away for the weekend, a spontaneous trip perhaps. But as days passed with no word, the initial hope began to fade, replaced by a gnawing fear. Worry turned to panic as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Her parents were called, their worst nightmare unfolding before their eyes. A missing person report was filed, setting in motion a chain of events that would consume countless lives. The search for Kristin Smart had begun, a desperate attempt to find her and bring her home. Starting with the last person seen with her, Paul Flores, who quickly became the focus of the investigation. The short walk home became a mystery that would haunt a campus and a family for decades, a constant reminder of the unanswered questions and the enduring pain. The investigation would focus on that final stretch of the walk, meticulously retracing Kristin's steps, searching for any clue that could shed light on her disappearance. And the man who walked it with her, the last person to see her alive, would remain at the center of the storm. The questions would only grow, multiplying with each passing year as the mystery surrounding Kristin Smart's disappearance deepened. The initial investigation into Kristin Smart's disappearance was, in retrospect, deeply flawed. Hindsight is always 20/20ths, but the missteps taken in those crucial early days would haunt the case for decades to come. Critical opportunities were missed, and procedures weren't followed as diligently as they should have been. Cal Poly police were noticeably slow to act in the immediate aftermath of Kristin's disappearance. The urgency that should have been present seemed to be lacking, a critical error in a missing person case where time is of the essence. They failed to properly seal Paul Flores' dorm room, a potential crime scene, and perhaps more significantly, they didn't initially treat Kristin's disappearance with the seriousness it deserved, failing to consider the possibility of an abduction from the outset. This oversight allowed crucial time to slip away. This initial delay inadvertently gave Flores valuable time to clean his room, conceal potential evidence, and carefully get his story straight, crafting a narrative that he hoped would deflect suspicion. When investigators finally got around to interviewing him, his story was riddled with inconsistencies and contradictions, and he presented with a black eye, the origin of which he couldn't convincingly explain. Adding to the suspicion, cadaver dogs alerted on Flores' mattress, a chilling indication that a deceased body may have been present. Yet despite these red flags, with no recovered body and a lack of definitive forensic evidence, there was ultimately no arrest made at that time. The sheriff's office subsequently took over the investigation, but by then, much of the initial momentum had been irrevocably lost. Flores, lawyered up, and predictably invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, refusing to cooperate further with the investigation. The case stalled, relegated to the files of unsolved mysteries, a cold case gathering dust and fading from public memory. Paul Flores eventually moved away, remaining the primary person of interest in the eyes of investigators, but frustratingly, never formally charged with any crime related to Kristin's disappearance. The Smart family was left in a torturous state of limbo, with the agonizing knowledge of who they believed was responsible for Kristin's fate, yet with no clear path to achieving justice for their daughter. The persistent lack of concrete evidence created an insurmountable wall, a barrier that stood for more than 2 decades, preventing any real progress in the case. The trail, it seemed, had definitively gone cold. While the investigation stalled, the Smart family refused to let Kristin be forgotten. Stan and Denise Smart became tireless advocates, pushing for change and keeping Kristin's story alive. They helped pass the Kristin Smart Campus Safety Act, ensuring better cooperation between campus and local police. They put up billboards, gave interviews, and maintained a website for tips. Their persistence kept the case in the public eye. Every year without answers was another layer of pain, but they never gave up hope. They believed the truth would surface. Their fight was a steady flame that refused to be extinguished. For over 20 years, the case remained cold until 2019. Chris Lambert, a local musician and journalist, started the podcast Your Own Backyard. His deep dive into the case reignited public interest and brought new witnesses forward. The podcast captivated millions, creating a groundswell of pressure on law enforcement. The sheriff's office, already re-examining the case, accelerated their efforts. New search warrants were executed, including at Paul Flores' father's home. Investigators used modern forensics, seizing electronics and searching for evidence. Major excavations took place under Ruben Flores' deck. While Kristin's remains weren't found, the search signaled real progress. The silence was finally breaking. The investigation was moving forward with urgency. Hope was rekindled. In April 2021, 25 years after Kristin disappeared, Paul Flores was arrested for her murder. His father, Ruben, was charged as an accessory. The arrests were based on a mountain of circumstantial and biological evidence. The trial, moved to Monterey County, was emotional and complex. Prosecutors painted Paul as a predator. The defense argued there was no body, no DNA, and unreliable witnesses. After 3 months, the verdicts came in. Paul Flores was found guilty of first-degree murder. A moment of relief for the Smart family. Ruben Flores was acquitted. The split decision left one question painfully unresolved. Where is Kristin? Justice had begun, but the story was far from over. The search for answers continued. Paul Flores' conviction was a landmark moment, but it was the evidence found beneath Ruben Flores' deck that changed everything. On April 20th, 2021, prosecutors announced that ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs had found biological evidence indicating Kristin Smart's body was once buried beneath the deck of Ruben Flores' home and had been subsequently exhumed and hidden elsewhere. This discovery was a turning point in the case, providing the strongest indication yet of what happened to Kristin and reigniting hope for justice. For the Smart family, it was validation, proof that their search for answers had not been in vain, but it was not closure. Ruben's acquittal left a hole in the story. If Kristin's body was moved, where did it go? Without her remains, the family couldn't lay her to rest. The verdict confirmed the what and the who, but not the where. The search for Kristin continues, as the Smart family pleads for the truth and for her to be brought home. The family's pleas for the Flores family to reveal her location have gone unanswered. The case ends with a fractured resolution, justice in court, but peace still out of reach. For families like the Smarts, a conviction is just one step in a much longer journey. The personal chapter remains open, haunted by absence. The legacy of Kristin Smart's case is complex. It's a story of system failure, but also of persistence and hope. The Your Own Backyard podcast showed how new media can drive justice. Kristin's story changed laws and forced law enforcement to improve. Her disappearance became a catalyst for positive change. But it also raises questions about the nature of justice. Is a conviction enough when a family can't bury their child? The Smart family's search continues, suggesting justice is more than a verdict. Kristin's story is a haunting reminder. Even when the truth is found, peace can remain elusive. Her story will echo on, a quiet but persistent reminder in the hills of California's Central Coast. Thank you for watching Dark Origin. For more true crime and mystery stories, hit subscribe and join us on the next journey into the unknown.